Scott Schoen here from the Family Martial Arts Academy. Today I'm going to be giving you some of my thoughts on video games and just sort of the whole phenomenon of video games and how they have affected our culture and our children and even our adults. And I just want to share with you a little bit of a sort of unique perspective as I was looking this up and just have read articles over the years and books and different things on this issue. I think there is so much there's so much double-blind studies out there. They take one group of kids and another group of kids and they do a double-blind study, and they say these kids engaged in half as many video games, these kids did no video games, and these kids did 2 hours of video games every day. And then over the course of 6 months, aggressive behavior was reduced by XYZ and so forth and so on. And that's the scientific method. And certainly that can produce certain results, and you can look at it statistically and measure things. But I think beyond the scientific method, we should be able to use reason and logic and observation to see what's really working with our individual children and what makes sense to us and what produces results in them, not in some giant study where there's thousands of other factors. You're not controlling parenting, you're not controlling what they're eating, you're not controlling hundreds of different factors. And when you look at just isolating one factor and then removing it from the equation and seeing if there's an improvement, sometimes I don't think that works. Many times, to improve in something in our life, we may need a combination of 5 or 10 different new behaviors before we see any real change in the results. And so when you're changing just one at a time and isolating it and then observing the results, you're not going to see any difference because you're not getting the compounding effect. And I think video games are very much along those lines. And today I'm going to talk about two different perspectives. One, what could be the positive side effects of playing video games? And then two, what are some of the dangers or pitfalls that can happen when children play video games? So the first thing is that playing video games releases different chemicals in the brain. When we engage in different activities, we get dopamine, which is a reward chemical when we're having fun. Serotonin can help us relax, different things like those. When our mind gets occupied with something that's moving very quickly and we're watching it, like a movie, TV, or video games, there's a certain level of distraction that occurs from our regular stresses. Our mind tends to get absorbed in something as if we had something very important to do, like that video game, and your mind gets absorbed in it, and then your other thoughts tend to be put to the side. And so there is a certain effect of momentary relief from stress. But my argument would be that the only way to remove something as a stress factor is to confront it and deal with it, or to confront it and let go of that stress and decide that that's not something important for you right now. Sort of the idea maybe your child is getting stressed out by being teased at school. Well, obviously playing a video game may momentarily relieve that stress, but then my question is, when does it really deal with the issue of bullying? No, he still has bullying issues, or if he had poor grade issues. So instead, he takes the time to learn some bullying strategies and implements them, and then overcomes this, and he's no longer getting bullied, or it's dealt with the teachers and the principal. That to me is stress relief. That's really dealing with that, or learning to teach him some strategies so that the bully's comments don't affect him, and then he becomes less of a target. That's how to relieve stress, not just playing a video game that distracts you from those thoughts of being stressed. Video games can improve logical thinking. I do agree with this one. I think that video games require a certain level of intelligence, and they require problem solving. My issue with it is many times it's the same type of problem over and over at a similar level. Because when you up the level of the difficulty of the logic involved or different things like that, then you eliminate many people who can play. And video games tend to instead keep the level of logic and difficulty in terms of figuring something out mentally about the same. And then each time they just put in different factors and different places to look. And so really the logic of it is not elevating to the point where you're sitting down with a piece of paper and going through 50 steps to figure out something. It's not like that, because it would not encourage people to play. It's too hard. And so instead, it's more unusual, or you have to play the game more, you have to get more armor or points or different things like that, and that doesn't really increase one's ability to think logically. I think it's more just a building up process of doing medium level logic tasks, and then they compound to make a larger one. And you can see this because young kids can play a video game and get really good, and so can adults. If these games were really, very logically challenging, only an adult with training could unravel them. But that's not the reality of the situation. And so they are challenging. They take a lot of coordination. There's a lot of steps to do. But it's not this extremely difficult logical task. And that's just sort of where I think, the idea is that it's simple economics. It wouldn't sell as well. It wouldn't interest as many people. It wouldn't be as engaging and addictive if it was made that way. Another argument for video games is the idea that it creates quick decision-making skills. And I do think this is true. Definitely children get the idea of practicing something over and over, but there's so much reward involved. They make one little improvement on how they can move their thumb, or one little improvement on their ability to see something or to get a new armor, and bang, they get rewarded with a new ability, a new thing, and they're constantly being rewarded for every minute step of improvement. And while that's definitely exciting, it does not simulate in any way the reality of daily life, which includes winning and losing, and going through long periods where you're not improving in things, and then making gains, and most gains are so small that you don't see them over a long period of time. So, in that way, it can help with some of those things. But I think too, just the overabundance of reward in video games, it tends to negate the positive effects, because it simulates a fantasy world in which you're receiving rewards so quickly that it's just unrealistic. I think people might say, well, you could use the same logic for TV or for a book, and on some level you can. A book tends to take you into a fantasy world, and it's exciting, but you're using your imagination. A TV to some degree too, but I think TV can be a very mind-numbing activity and should be used in moderation. Just like if you go to see a play, it's fun, it's exciting, and people have put a lot of work into it, but you wouldn't sit in front of plays 4 hours or 5 or 6 hours a day. It would be destructive. It would be a waste of time. So that's really my thoughts on the positive side of video games. And like I said, I don't want to totally discount that, but on the other side of things, I do think some of the points I brought up about the negative counterpoints to how they're saying video games are good for us are there. And this is one of the reasons I rarely play video games. I don't have a video game system that I use in my house. I think it is something that would take away from the energies I have to accomplish what I want out of life. And it also depends on who you are and your age and different things like that. So take all of that into account, and just observe your child playing video games and not playing video games, their level of determination to play video games. Anything that you want to do so bad, for me, would be a negative. You should be able to not have such an intensive urge to have to do something. Look for part 2 coming out soon.